rally, a sport reserved for the bravest, most battle-hardened, most absolutely off their bloody rocker drivers. Walter Roll, Juha Kankkunen, Colin McRae, you know them, legends carved into the annals of motorsports. But there is one legend that you've never heard of. One that rose through the ranks as the ultimate underdog. One that pissed off every male racing driver that went up against her. One that still holds a title that nobody else has. The Queen of the Mountain. Michele Mouton starts her story in the small perfumer town of Grasse, France. And she was like any other young French girl in the 60s and 70s. When she wasn't in school, she was skiing or at ballet. But being near the French Riviera, there was a distinct sound that echoed through the mountains. The raucous exhaust note of the Alpine A110 rally cars as they ripped through the iconic Tour de Corse. And for many of the French youth, it was a siren song. But while Michele certainly liked the thrill, the danger, the smells and sounds of rally, that was mostly because of her father's obsession with cars. Her dad, Pierre, was an absolute gearhead. He loved working on cars, driving cars, and most of all, he loved going fast. Pierre even had his own aspirations of being a racing driver, but found himself a prisoner of war for 5 years during World War II. So those dreams, sadly, just stayed dreams. But that didn't mean he couldn't share his passion with his children. He taught Michele how to drive their Citroën 2CV when she was just 14 years old. And while Michele was happy to share that time with her father, cars just weren't for her. Motorsports of every flavor was the ultimate expression of masculinity, and was gatekept by older, generally wealthy men. And so, eventually, Michele went off to college to study law, and it seemed like racing cars was a long-forgotten path for her. But then, one of her close friends, Jean Taby, reached out to her, because Jean was pursuing a career in rally. And he asked Michele if she wanted to ride along on one of his practice runs for the Tour de Corse. Now, Michele had plenty of things to do. Law school was tremendously busy. But she thought back to her father and how much he would have loved for her to experience something like this. So she said yes. It would be a fun little experience, like a roller coaster ride, and it would be a story she could tell her friends. But she would come to find out that it wasn't just a fun little experience. Jean took her on an absolute scorcher of a rally stage. The shriek of 8,000 RPM, the smell of burning petrol, blurry trees flying through her periphery. It was terrifying. It was thrilling. And nothing she had ever done compared to it. After that one little run, she just couldn't get rally out of her head. So the very next year, she returned to the Tour de Corse rally. But this time, not just for a ride-along. She was now Jean's official co-driver, which meant that Michele was officially a racing driver. Well, sort of. She was about as much of a racing driver as I am a chef. For example, this just happened last week. And welcome back to the 200th annual Albon cooking competition. Let's check in with Team Chef.
Are you trying to make us lose this competition, chefs?
No, chef!
Ooh, doggy, it looks like Team Chef is really struggling with all that prep work. Let's take a look at the opposing team, Team Factor. Well, it looks like this team is going for a no prep, no mess approach with Factor, of course. No stressful meal planning and no extensive prepping required.
I need you to fire the veggies right now, chefs. Are you mute, chefs?
No, chef!
Then say yes, chef.
Yes, chef!
Ooh, wow, contrary to Team Chef, Team Factor here is looking like they'll have this Factor Chef prepared meal done in minutes. Makes even going out and getting unhealthy fast food seem like a chore. That is mighty quick. Ooh, doggy, it looks like too much salt.
No. Chef, taste this. This is awful. How are we gonna feed this to the judges? I wouldn't feed this to my hamster. Yes, chef?
Yes, chef!
Thank you.
And look at that excellent meal that they've prepared. Plus they've got vegan, vegetarian, keto, and calorie smart options. And knives down, everybody, time is up. First up, we got Team Factor with the gorgeous looking salmon, and in record breaking time, no less. And then we got Team Chef with, what is that? Yeah, it's pretty clear here. The winner is Team Factor. Yay! Ooh, doggy, good thing you and I can use the link in the description, or just go to go.factor75.com and use this code for 50% off our first box of Fact. Just click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. We'll see you next year, folks. Let's hope Team Chef doesn't come back. Michele was still in law school, and all her attention needed to be in her books if she wanted to become a lawyer. But she absolutely loved being on a rally stage. She was well and truly smitten by racing, and so she was at a crossroads. She needed some help, and so she consulted the one person who knew her best, her father. Pierre, no doubt, must have been tremendously excited, but he saw how torn his daughter was. So he proposed to her a plan, one that would give her the time she needed to feel confident about her decision. Pierre would build her a rally car fit to compete in, and he would give her 12 months to prove to both him and herself that this was the path for her. But there was one caveat. She couldn't just be a navigator. Michele needed to be in the driver's seat. And that was all she needed to hear. Just like how all you needed to hear was to go to the link in the description and check out our all-new Albon merch. Michele's first official rally car was an Alpine A110, courtesy of her dad. And at the 1973 Rally Paris, she lined up for her first official event as a driver. And well, it went okay. She wasn't exactly a prodigy out the gate, but she was motivated to keep at it. After that, she entered the Tour de France Automobile. Then immediately after that, she entered another rally and finally saw a decent result by placing 8th in her class. Sure, it wasn't first place, but she was consistently getting better after each and every event. And over those next 12 months, Michele entered rally after rally, until finally, in 1974, she made her debut in WRC, the World Rally Championship, the big leagues. And well, in her first event, she placed 12th. Not bad for her debut race. And it was pretty safe to say by now that law school probably wasn't happening again. She was driving at a level that proved to herself and those around her that she was here to stay. But in that same WRC debut race, she got a taste of what the road ahead looked like as a female in a male-dominated sport. Many of her counterparts were suspicious that her car was too fast. She was accused of having special engine parts in her car that were illegal for her class, because how else could a woman beat all these men in a race, right? Of course, Michele had nothing to hide. She opened her car up for inspection and passed with flying colors. And by the end of 1974, Michele was unstoppable, becoming the French and European ladies WRC champion. And when rally racing wasn't enough to prove her chops to those around her, she decided to try out some of this circuit racing stuff that all the boys talked about. And in 1975, she joined an all-women's team to race at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Yes, her idea of trying out some circuit racing was by racing at the most intense 24-hour race in the world. And well, she and her team won, taking home the gold in the 2-liter prototype class. And when people asked her how she did it, she said it was the hard rain that separated her from the rest of the field. When the rest of the cars pitted for wet tires, she stayed out on track with slicks. Why? Well, she said that she had no trouble with the slick tires, and it would be a waste of time to pit. And before she knew it, she was passing every single car in her way. Rain to a rally driver was just another day in the office, I guess. And with all this success behind the wheel, both on and off-road, it was only a matter of time before a big sponsorship opportunity came up. And the first of many calls was by the French oil company, Elf. They were thoroughly impressed with Michele, and with their sponsorship, she now had the financial backing to go pro. Now Michele was racing full-time and kicking serious butt too. In 1977, much to her surprise, Fiat approached her and offered her a seat on their Rally Works team. And not only was this a big budget manufacturer team, but also the other Fiat car was driven by Jean-Claude André, a proven WRC winner coming off wins at Monte Carlo and Tour de Corsa. And as for the actual car that she would be driving, well, it was a Fiat 131 Abarth. And to put it nicely, well, she didn't like it. She said that it was too big and it drove more like a truck than an actual car. But Michele made it work, and worked really well at that. She placed 5th in the championship 3 years in a row, a tremendous result and so close to the elusive WRC trophy. And when she wasn't driving her Fiat at the sanctioned WRC events, she was driving other cars to hone her craft. Like in 1978 when she drove a Lancia Stratos HF to 7th place, or when she won a class victory behind the wheel of a Porsche Carrera RS. Michele absolutely loved driving different cars, different layouts, but boy, was she in for a surprise in 1980, because that's the year that Audi gave her a call and asked if she wanted to drive for them in the upcoming year. And not just in any old car, To paint the picture for you, this was the early 80s, and any rally historian will tell you that this was the wildest time for rally racing. Group 4 cars were transitioning to Group B class, and rally technology was going insane. We actually did a whole video on it that you could find on our channel. But Audi explained to Michele that their foray into Group B involved something entirely new that they had just developed. They called it the Audi Quattro. At the time, Audi Quattro was just a development project that entered a couple of races in 1980, and even though it did well, it was overlooked by serious competitors. The car had a permanent four-wheel drive system, and to the rest of the grid, all that meant was that the car would be too heavy to stand a chance against the lightweight two-wheel drive cars. Michele herself may have had some doubts, but nonetheless, a French racing driver getting a call from a major German racing team, that was a big deal. And for Michele, she had come such a long way from being a rookie in her dad's Alpine, so this was an offer that she couldn't turn down. And word got out that Audi just offered their last seat to a woman, and that shattered the egos of every driver that felt like they were deserving of that phone call. The doubters called it a publicity stunt, discrediting Michele before she even got behind the wheel of that Audi. And the cherry on top of it all, well, that was the fact that Michele's co-driver was going to be Fabrizia Pons. Yes, another woman racer. This was perfect for Michele. Plus, she was going to be on the same team as Hannu Mikkola, one of her idols in the rally scene. But if you thought that was the only grief she would get driving for Audi, well, then you're wrong. During practices, regardless of how her on-track performance went, journalists would tell her to just smile for the camera. They didn't give a damn about her as a racing driver. They just wanted to put her on camera as eye candy to boost their viewership. But Michele didn't take guff from nobody, and she told those journalists to their faces that they wouldn't dare tell someone like Mikkola to just shut up and smile, so why the heck were they saying it to her? It didn't help her case, of course, that her first season with Audi was a little bit troublesome, with questionable reliability from the car that caused some early retirements. And by the end of the season, it wasn't just the journalists scrutinizing her for being a woman. Ari Vatanen, a rally superstar, was quoted saying that he would retire the day that he ever lets a female beat him in a race. And guess what? At that very same event, Michele beat him and took home her very first WRC victory. She would go down in the record books that day, becoming the first woman to ever win a WRC event. And as for Ari, well, he was asked about this quote 41 years later, and well, he apologized and said that Michele's speed really put every driver's masculinity to the test. Michele was finally getting into her groove by the end of that season, but the very next year, the 1982 season, would prove to be even more difficult than the last one for Michele. But not because of her racing. No, she was a beast on track. She took first place in Rally Portugal, then won again in Greece, and won again for a third time in Brazil. And before she knew it, she was fighting for the championship against rally legend Walter Roll with only 2 events left on the calendar. And the next race was the Rally Côte d'Ivoire, a race that she knew she could win. But before Michele could even prepare for the race, her father, Pierre, passed away. The man that supported her rally dreams, the man that raised her to be fearless in the face of adversity, the man that saw the same fire in her as he did himself, was gone. And he had passed right at the height of her career, just 2 events away from the championship. Michele was devastated. It had been her dream to hold that trophy up alongside her father. At this point, she didn't even want to race, and Fabrizia co-signed that idea. But it was Michele's mom that pushed for her to compete in the Ivory Coast. She told Michele that Pierre wouldn't want it any other way. He wanted to see her win more than anybody. And so she laced up her racing boots and got ready to drive. In the first stages, she put the hammer down, and she had an over 25-minute lead ahead of Walter Roll. And in between stages, away from the prying eyes of the public, she cried, remembering her father and mourning his absence. But when she emerged in front of the world, she showed no weakness. Nobody even knew what had happened yet. And through the next stage, she drove the pants off that Audi, and she was now over an hour ahead of Roll. The championship was now in sight more than ever. But in typical Audi fashion, her car was starting to fail her. Her gearbox gave out, and it took the team 25 minutes to fix it. And Walter Roll was coming up right behind her in time. So she pushed even harder to claw back some of that gap she had built up. But Michele pushed a little bit too hard, and not long before the end of the race, ended up crashing the car. Thankfully, she and Fabrizia were fine, but Walter Roll cemented his place in first. Michele was now out of the contention for the championship. Walter Roll would go on to publicly say that he won because he could never accept second place to Michele in the championship. And quote, "Not because I doubted her capabilities as a driver, but because she was a woman." Bro, what? It was a tremendous disappointment for Michele, but now more than ever, she knew she couldn't back down. She just had to get faster. In the very next season, it was all about Group B, the craziest racing class to ever exist. And Michele, well, she was behind the wheel of the poster car of Group B. But one thing about Group B rally in the 80s was that there were a lot of crashes. It was quite a big problem, and really the main reason that Group B would go on to be banned years later. And a problem that Michele was painfully aware of, because in the very first race of the season, she crashed into a stone wall at 60 miles per hour. A horrible start for her and Team Audi. And unfortunately, the season didn't get much better for her from there. The best she could muster was finishing 5th overall in the WRC Drivers' Championship, which is by no means unimpressive, but for Michele, it was a big disappointment, having competed for first place in the prior season. And sadly, it was all downhill from there. The following year in 1984, Audi signed Walter Roll to the team, and Michele was bumped down to part-time driver. A gut-wrenching blow to say the least. Things just weren't going the way Michele had wanted. But like every other stage in her life, she took adversity head-on and forged her own path. And that very same year, Audi had asked her to represent the team at a race in America, a little race called the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. And Michele agreed. Pikes Peak was a clean slate, a totally different environment where she could focus and prove what she was truly capable of. But when she got to Colorado, she realized the pressure on her was even higher than she thought. A European was going to compete in America's hill climb. And okay, sure, there were some other Europeans, but Audi was sending a woman? Damn right they were. Michele piloted her Audi Sport Quattro up the hill quick enough to place 2nd overall. And well, she was furious that she didn't take first. Even though she shattered times set by dedicated Pikes Peak hill climb cars, she didn't care. Her goal wasn't 2nd place. So she decided then and there that conquering the hill was in her future. So she came back the very next year, and this time she was out for blood. And Fabrizia, bless her heart, may have been vital as Michele's co-driver, but Michele needed all the weight savings she could get. So she took on Pikes Peak solo. Well, she absolutely monstered it. Not only did Michele Mouton become the first woman ever to win overall at Pikes Peak, she did it by absolutely shattering the record time by 13 seconds. 13 seconds, and from a standing start in neutral because of a penalty she got beforehand. In a race where the winner is crowned King of the Mountain, Michele Mouton stands as the one and only Queen of the Mountain. And that 1985 season would be the last time that Michele would ever drive for Audi again. Because in 1986, she joined Peugeot and decided that she was going to race in just the German Rally Championship and a couple of local events instead of the full calendar. The German press took quite a liking to her and quickly named her Der Schwarze Vulkan, or the Black Volcano. They said it was because of her long black hair and also a nod to her temperament, which oddly enough wasn't something they ever said about her much louder, much more brash male counterparts. Regardless, Michele went on to win 6 out of the 8 events in the German Rally Championship and became the overall champion by the second to last event, once again etching her name into the history books and becoming the first ever female driver to win a major rally championship. But that would be the last professional championship for Michele as a rally driver. Group B racing as a whole was dealing with its own issues, and ultimately the FIA decided that Group B would be cancelled forever after that season's horrific events. And with Group B over, Michele agreed that her time was over as well. And in October of 1986, Michele announced her retirement from the world of rally. But just because she wasn't behind the wheel anymore doesn't mean that she was done being a pioneer in the sport. Just 2 years after retirement, Michele co-founded the Race of Champions event in order to honor the late Henry Tovinen and to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of WRC. And now, without any ties to a major car manufacturer, Michele was able to drive any car she wanted for her many side quests. In 1988, she drove a Peugeot 205 T16 Dakar car at the Rally of Tunisia. In 2000, she drove a Porsche 911 in the UK. In 2004, she competed in the Dakar Rally, and again in 2009, at 58 years old. And in 2010, she finished second at the Rally of Morocco. And all the while, Michele was making it known that she felt that there was something wrong with motorsports. Because why did nobody else on the grid look like her? And any grid, not just in rally. 30 years on from when she started her career, women still weren't part of the conversation in racing. And in her journey to create that representation, Michele became the first president of the FIA's Women in Motorsports Commission. She had already proven that women can race alongside and beat the best of men. But now it was time to be vocal, to be a voice for women and girls all over the world that had a love for racing. And Michele worked on efforts to bring women not only into racing, but into all aspects of motorsports, from engineering to design and so on. And in 2012, Michele Mouton was inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame. And I can't think of somebody more deserving than she. In a world where Sterling Moss called her one of the best to ever race, a world where Niki Lauda called her Superwoman, Michele Mouton broke through every barrier that made its way in front of her. And although she certainly earned the title of greatest female driver ever, Michele's real achievement was that she transcended that and became known as one of the greatest racing icons of all time, period. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to support Albon, hit the link in the description and buy a shirt, and tell us about it on Discord. Or hit the link to our Patreon and join us there. I'll see you in the next one.